All right, it is 12 o'clock on the dot. So we are going to go ahead and get started on our lunch and learn today. We are talking about MACD governance and specifically the executive committee. So have been doing a series of trainings regarding governance for Michigan Association of Conservation Districts. And we've talked about the general overall governance before as far as what the different roles are and partnerships are. And today we're really going to dive into the nitty-gritty of the executive committee specifically. We will definitely have plenty of time at the end for questions. So if you have questions, you can throw them in the chat anytime and we'll go through them whenever I get a second. And if I see it and I can answer it during the presentation, I will. And otherwise, we'll make sure we get all of those questions added at the end. So this is our current executive committee, plus myself, plus Diane Gray, and absent from this photo is Art Pilon, our past president. But this is our current committee. So what we're going to talk about today is the overall governance structure of MACD, the roles and responsibilities of the executive committee, and the election process for the executive committee. So that everyone knows if they have thought about running for the executive committee or want to serve in that additional role, what that looks like and how they can run for those positions. So first, the executive director, I am a member of the executive committee as an advisory role and to be able to share what's going on. The executive director is hired by a selection process that's coordinated by the executive committee. The hiring is confirmed by state council, and I am an employee of the association and handle the day-to-day operations of the Michigan Association of Conservation Districts. So that is kind of my role as the executive director, and I present all of those day-to-day issues or things I need feedback on or approval from to the executive committee. The executive committee consists of the president, vice president, treasurer, and most recent past president. And currently serving in those roles are Jerry Miller as president, Steve Law as vice president, Nancy Sixai as treasurer, and Art Pilon as our past president. So as I said, my role is a hired employee of the organization, whereas the executive committee are all elected roles for the organization to handle the executive committee duties. So what is the executive committee duties? This is the language directly from our bylaws as an organization. It says the executive committee shall act in accordance with the direction of state council under the established policies and budget, and shall make recommendations to state council concerning general operations, policies, and budgets. The executive committee shall serve as the principal liaison between the association and its employees, and the executive committee shall meet at the call of the president. So what does that mean from a practical standpoint? A lot of the day-to-day decisions of the organization are either made by the executive director or by the executive committee. And all of that is laid out in those policies, general operations procedures that are determined by state council. So typically the authorization to make certain types of decisions will come before the state council. The budget as a whole for the organization will come before state council for approval. And then the executive committee will meet to do those day-to-day things in accordance with those policies and budget. So the state council typically meets quarterly, whereas the executive committee meets monthly or as needed to maintain the day-to-day operations and provide support to the executive director in that role. So what is the role of state council? So state council is what we call our board of directors in nonprofit language. And that's an important distinction to make, is that even though we use that term state council, that it really is our board of directors as a nonprofit organization. MACD is a 501c3 nonprofit, and our role is to provide organization, advocacy, training, and support to conservation districts, which are local units of government. And so our state council serves as our board. And here are some of the things, according to our bylaws, that state council is responsible for: to manage the affairs of the organization, develop policies and procedures, approve the budget and be accountable for the organizational finances, approve contracts and expenditures, approve and administer personnel guidelines, confirm the appointment of committees, disseminate information to the general public and to member districts, and establish membership dues 30 days prior to the next fiscal year. So again, in practical terms, what some of these things look like is the HR committee, for example, will meet and review and make recommendations for updates to the personnel policy that we have that guidelines some of those personnel decisions as far as hiring, staff management, day-to-day policies about PTO. Then that personnel policy is presented in its entirety to State Council for review and approval. The budget also is, created by the executive director with support from the finance committee, and heavily involved is the treasurer. And then that will also be presented to State Council for final approval. And there's kind of this balance between responsibility and roles between State Council and the executive committee and the executive director. So who can be a member of State Council? State Council consists of a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary treasurer that are elected from the board of directors at districts. So any district board director can be elected to a State Council role, and any district board director can be elected to the executive committee, which we'll go over in more detail related to the executive committee shortly. Most of you probably know our organizational structure is that the entire state is divided into 10 regions throughout the state. You can see that map right under our State Council section on our website, where those regional lines are. And all of those 10 regions biannually or every 2 years elect a chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer for their region to represent them at State Council. And those elections happen at the regional meeting for the region, or the region has the option to do their elections at the annual meeting for MACD. Odd regions elect in even years, and even regions elect in odd years. So this being 2026, an even year, that means this year is when we're electing State Council members for all the odd districts. So odd regions rather. So regions 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 are all going to be having their elections for their State Council leadership at their region meetings throughout the year. And this is a really important reason why we encourage board directors to make sure that they attend those region meetings, because that serves a really important role in the governance of MACD to be able to elect those members at each regional level to form that State Council leadership. So let's dive into the individual roles of each of the executive committee members. The first of those is the president. The president serves a 2-year term. Currently, that is being served by Jerry Miller. He was elected at the last annual meeting in December of 2025. 2025. He was elected or re-elected rather, to continue serving as president of MACD. And here's what our bylaws say about the role of the president. The president shall preside at meetings of the Assembly, State Council, and the Executive Committee. The president shall be the chief executive officer for the association and shall be responsible for seeing that the policies of the association are carried out in accordance with the applicable procedures and requirements. The president or designated district director shall represent the association at regional, state, and national functions. The president has the authority to appoint all committees with the confirmation of the State Council, and the president shall be an ex officio member of all association committees. So here again, you see kind of some of the interplay in the governance between the role of the president and the role of State Council. So the president, Jerry, has the authority to appoint the committees that we have, and then those have to be ratified or confirmed at the State Council meeting. And we typically will go through on an annual basis and confirm all of the members of the committees, the chairs of the committees, and Jerry is always invited to any committee meeting. Some of the committees include like the Development Committee, the Finance Committee, the HR Committee, the Governance Committee, the education committee, that all serve roles within the organization to help have additional support on moving those policies and procedures forward. And then those are brought to the entirety of state council for approval and changes. So functionally, the president serves as the chair of any meeting of our meetings. So the chair of assembly meetings, annual meetings, state council meetings, and the chair of the executive committee when it meets. The president serves a really critically important role as the support person for the executive director to be able to make sure that all of the decisions being made on a day-to-day basis by the organization have approval and support at the executive director level and then at the state council level, and making sure we're following our bylaws and making sure that we're being responsible for all of our obligations, whether it be to grants or to membership dues, etc. The president or the designated district director shall represent the association at regional, state, and national functions. So what this looks like is often the president may attend state events or serve on committees that have statewide implications. National functions often is the National Association of Conservation Districts. Our president serves as our state representative from Michigan to NACD in order to represent us on the national level and have our vote for the state of Michigan in national policies, resolutions, procedures, etc. The role of the vice president, from our bylaws, the vice president shall assume the duties of the president whenever the president is absent. The vice president shall be responsible for coordinating the association annual meeting and shall fulfill other assignments at the discretion and request of the president. In the absence of the secretary treasurer, the vice president is authorized to receive and disperse association funds as approved by the assembly and or state council. So the vice president serves as a kind of secondary person who's able to act on behalf of both the president and, as noted in here, on behalf of the treasurer if needed. And also participates in all of those executive committee meetings and can also serve and participate in an advocacy role on any of those types of state meetings. Again, NACD, our second person, if Jerry is not available and able to go to a National Association meeting and vote on behalf of Michigan, then Steve has that authority to go and make those votes and serve as representation for our state. Both the president, the vice president, and the treasurer, as you'll note on here, are all 2-year terms. So every term for any of these officer roles are always 2-year terms. What is the role of the treasurer? Well, as is implied by the name, the secretary treasurer shall assume the duties of the president in the absence of the president and vice president, and the secretary treasurer shall receive and disperse the funds of the association as approved by the assembly and or state council. And in practical terms, a lot of what the treasurer does is working with the executive director to prepare the financial statements and budgets. The treasurer also serves as the chair of the finance committee and be able to maintain accountability for all of the association finances and ensure that information about the finances are distributed to both the executive committee, the finance committee, and to state council. And again, shall assume the duties of the president in the absence of president and vice president. So if for any reason the president or vice president is not available, then the treasurer can step into that role to serve as representation or to assume the role of the chair for association meetings or at the annual assembly or at state council as needed. On a practical day-to-day basis as well, the treasurer is a signatory of all of the financial accounts, and all of our accounts at MACD with our current policies require double approval for any expenditures. And so that approval is through the treasurer and the executive director. And then all those financial statements are reviewed by the finance committee and then presented to state council on a quarterly basis. As I mentioned, all of our current officers, Jerry, Steve, and Nancy, were all all three reelected to their current positions at our December annual meeting in 2025 at Shanty Creek. So when is our next elections? Elections are always held in connection with the annual meeting, which is also the major governance meeting that includes not only state council, but every single district throughout the state can provide one board director as a representative to vote on behalf of their county or counties at that state meeting, annual meeting. And that state annual meeting always happens in connection with our annual conference. So this last year, for example, we had it the morning before the official start of the conference. So we had our morning annual meeting, and then we had our opening welcome luncheon that kicked off the conference. And that's how we will continue to do it going forward. So this year in 2026, because the president, vice president, and treasurer are all serving 2-year terms, there will not be an election this year, but there will be an election next year at next year's annual meeting in 2027. The date for that meeting is October 12, 2027, and it's going to be at the Blue Water Convention Center in Port Huron, Michigan. And it is an in-person election. Our annual meeting is always an in-person meeting once a year. State council often meets virtually, and the executive committee almost always meets virtually. But our annual meeting is always in person, connected with our annual conference. So who is eligible to run for our executive committee positions? Well, you must be a board director at a local conservation district in Michigan. So you don't have to serve on state council, although there are a lot of benefits to having served on state council prior to running for election, because you have a deeper insight into how things work at state council and the bylaws, and have had an opportunity to gain that experience. But it's not required, but it is required that you be a board director at a local conservation district in Michigan. You cannot serve both on state council and as an officer concurrently. And so if you were an existing member of state council that you had been elected at a regional level to serve as regional representation, you would be able to run for an officer position. But once you were elected to that officer position, you would need to resign your regional role in order to serve as the officer for the organization. So what is the time commitment? We've talked about the bylaws, and we've talked about some of the things at a high level, but what functionally on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis does the executive committee do? So the executive committee meets monthly. All of the members of the executive committee also serve on the finance committee. So typically that means meeting for about 2 hours for the executive committee meeting and about 2 hours for the finance committee meeting once a month. It also involves time providing representation on committees, both representation internally at committees within MACD. For example, like I mentioned, Nancy, the treasurer, is the chair of the finance committee. She also serves on the HR committee as an example. Steve serves as the chair of our legislative committee. None of those roles of which committees that you are on are written in stone. That you can serve on committees at the pleasure of the president. And so that is flexible, but there is an expectation that you are providing committee leadership in some way on some committee, whatever is a good fit for your skills, experience, and interest as an officer. But representation on committees does also include committees external to MACD. So, for example, the Michigan Conservation Partnership meeting, the Michigan Technical Committee at NRCS, the MEEP Advisory Council, and various other committees that provide representation throughout the state. A lot of times that will be a discussion internally between the executive director and the executive committee in regards to who is the best fit to serve on any given committee, whether internal or external, again, based on skills, experience, time, and interest, to find who is the best fit between the executive committee and myself as the executive director. We represent MACD and conservation districts on a very wide range of committees and external advocacy related organizations. And that's an important part of keeping conservation district voices at the forefront of decisions that are being made in many related areas, whether it's forestry or ag. We make sure to have someone present at the Michigan Farm Bureau commodities meetings, at the private Michigan Forest Summit, and various other groups. We won't go into all of those, but the executive committee definitely has an important role in helping provide support to the executive director to have a presence at all of those different committees and spaces that we want to make sure to represent conservation districts. As I mentioned before, MACD participation, so serving as a voting member for our Michigan's representation and Michigan's vote at the National Association of Conservation Districts. Advocacy meetings, which includes both things like our Legislative Conservation Action Day in Lansing, as well as meeting with legislators throughout the year. Typically, we make an effort anytime we're meeting with a legislator, whenever possible, to have both the executive director and a member of the executive committee meeting available at all of those meetings with legislators to help advocate for funding for districts and other policy priorities that impact conservation districts, and providing general support to the executive director. And this looks a little different based on the role. Again, the president serves in a wider capacity for that compared to the vice president or the treasurer. The treasurer focuses on support for the executive director in issues related to the finance and budget and those pieces. And the president serves as kind of that main chief operating officer, as our bylaws states, of the committee, and then the vice president as needed and it's available to fill in as well. And then additional tasks as needed. Again, it's a really important role to provide representation and to serve as that main point of contact between state council and the staff and employees of the organization. How do you run? So if anyone is still watching this training and is really excited about running for the executive committee and is not nervous about the time commitment, is excited to put their skills and experience to work, then how would you go about running in 2027 if you wanted to? The first thing that you will need to do as we get closer to that date is there is a election committee that is formed in the year of the election. So in 2027, fiscal year 2027, an election committee will be formed and will send out information to all of the directors in the state of Michigan in regards to the election and how to go about it. You need to receive at least 3 letters of support from conservation districts throughout the state in order to run. And then having those 3 letters of support will mean that you are able to be added to the ballot. Candidates can be accepted that are not on the ballot, but obviously it's better if you are on the ballot and we have a ballot going into the annual meeting. So the first step is to receive those 3 letters of support to run for either president, vice president, or secretary treasurer from districts throughout the state. And it doesn't have to be your own home district or neighboring districts. It could be any district in the state that is willing to write a letter in support of your candidacy for either of those 3 roles. You share your vision for leadership with the conservation districts throughout the state. Once you get those 3 letters of support and you're on the ballot to run, then you'll want to talk to districts and say why you want to be the president, vice president, or secretary treasurer for the association and what your vision for leadership is so that they will vote for you at the annual meeting. So then at that in-person annual meeting, we have the election where everyone can put their vote in. There's 1 vote for every district in the state, and that vote is cast by a board director who is present at the annual meeting. So again, the importance of directors making sure that they are at both the regional meetings and at the annual meeting so that they can cast their vote on behalf of their district and influence the future of the leadership of MACD. So any director can cast that vote, but they have to be in person at the annual meeting in order to do so. So. So again, if you're thinking about maybe I would like to expand my leadership with MACD and with conservation districts throughout the state. What are some things that you could do to prepare to either run or to serve as an executive committee member? I strongly recommend that you attend state council meetings, annual meetings, and advocacy days. State council meetings are our state council meeting in July 17th will be available in person, and you'll be able to attend that meeting in Grand Rapids. If you're coming to the National Association of Conservation District summer meeting, we'll have an in-person state council meeting that will be open to anyone who wants to attend. You can also request from the president access to attend our virtual state council meetings. You won't be able to be a voting member or comment if you're not on state council already, but you can observe what happens at a state council meeting and understand the topics that are discussed, etc. And of course, serving on state council is a great way to be at the state council meeting. So if you are a director right now and not involved in state council, but think you might like to get more involved, going to your regional meeting and running for as a regional representative for your area is a great way to make sure you're at those state council meetings. Making sure you go to the annual meeting. Again, the annual meeting is a great place to see firsthand the governance of the organization and to cast your vote for your district and have influence on the decisions made at the state level. And our annual meeting this year is going to be October 20th in the morning at the Lansing Center in Lansing, Michigan, again, in connection with our annual conference. Attending advocacy days such as Legislative Day. We held it March 11th this last year in Lansing. We had a great turnout. It was a great opportunity to meet with other districts and network and meet other directors and staff members. Again, an important part of running for the executive committee is to build those relationships with other districts so you can get their support for the letter of support. Talking to our current executive committee and our current executive director, myself. I know that Jerry, Steve, Nancy are all happy to talk to people about what is involved in the executive committee and their role and answer questions logistically about things that the executive committee does. And I am also happy to talk to anyone who has interest in learning more about the executive committee and what is involved so that you can understand the process and understand if it's a good fit for you and your goals for providing leadership in the state. And again, building relationships with other districts. So if you are a board director at an individual district, having those relationships with other districts is an important part of being prepared and ready to serve as the association president, vice president, or secretary treasurer for the organization, because those relationships are really critical and important in order to be successful in those roles. So that is all the information that I have for you about what the executive committee does, what their roles are, and why those are important, and what the day-to-day looks like. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. You're welcome, Susan. Hopefully this was helpful and helps you better understand these positions and what they do. But I'm sure there are things that I haven't covered. So if you have questions, either throw them in the chat or you can feel free to unmute yourself as well and ask your question. And also we have Jerry here. So if I missed any important points as our current acting president, Jerry is the expert on bylaws, information, and anything else that I missed as well.
Great overview, Rivka. Excellent. No comments. You did well.
Thanks, Jerry. Any other questions from anybody, either for me or for Jerry or in general? And if it's something obscure that I can't answer for some reason now, I will find you an answer later. When I send out the recording of this meeting, I will also send out a copy of our bylaws that goes through in detail the elections process for both state council as well as for executive committee. And all of those roles and responsibilities that I shared are also in beautiful legalese in our bylaws. So I will be sharing the complete current edition of our bylaws when I send out this meeting recording as well. All right. Well, hearing no questions, thank you so much again for attending. If you're watching this after the fact and weren't able to attend in person, I'm really glad that you watched this training afterwards and hope that you're able to find all the answers you're looking for. If you have additional follow-up questions, feel free to send me an email anytime. And like I said, if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer for you. And if you have interest in running for any of these executive committee positions, please feel encouraged to reach out to our executive committee or to myself, and we're happy to answer those questions.
Rivka, will this be posted on the MACD website?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. We've been recording these trainings and we'll edit out the beginning and end weird parts and make it look pretty. And then we'll put it up on the website under our about section for the executive committee so that everybody can watch this at any time. And we will email it out to anybody who registered for this training, as well as probably I will just email it broadly, both to state council and to our board directors so they have it as a resource. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We have a couple of trainings coming up planned in June. One is going to be a training related to your MACD membership for districts and how to get the most out of your membership and make sure you are aware of all the membership benefits that come with being a member of MACD. And we will also be doing a collaborative training with the Michigan Forest Association about the Forest and Water Fund and how conservation districts can get access to applications and cost share dollars for people in their community who are forest landowners for conservation practices on their land. So those two trainings are coming up in June. And then in July, we have the NACD conference in Grand Rapids. And in August, we're going to be doing a training related to donations for conservation districts and how to receive and diversify your funds. And then we'll continue to let you know about other trainings throughout the year. And we'll always make sure to record them and share a recording because I know that time can be hard to carve out. But we've got a lot of great training planned for you coming up. So just watch your emails for more information about that. And thank you so much for making some time to spend with me today. And I look forward to chatting with you all again soon.